Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. This is the public hearing for the Parishes and Government Scrutiny Panel with the Chief Minister and the Minister for Treasury and Resources. As usual, the hearing is being recorded and streamed live, and a transcript of the entire hearing will be published on the States of Jersey website at a later date. Please could everybody ensure that electronic devices are switched to silent. We'll start with introductions. I am Deputy Helen Mars, I'm Chair of the panel.
Deputy Catherine Curtis, I'm the Vice Chair of the panel.
Deputy Christina Moore, I'm a member of the panel.
Good morning, Deputy Lyndon, Farnham, Chief Minister.
Elaine, Millar, Minister for Treasury.
Andy Heckwell, the Group Director of Strategic Finance.
Thank you.
And Paul Wiley, Chief Officer in the Cabinet Office.
Okay, thank you very much. We've set aside 1 hour for the hearing. We may or may not need that, and we're trying to divide questions between the both of you. So some of them will be for individuals, but some of them we'd like to comment from both of you. So as you know, this scrutiny panel was set up to examine the relationship between the parishes and the government, with the intention of, by the end of the year, really coming up with a body of evidence to show exactly where we are in 2025. This is an issue that hasn't been looked at seriously for over 20 years. So just to start really, Chief Minister, could you just give us your general views on the parish system and tell us how well you think it meets the needs of our community?
The parish system, I think it underpins our community. It supports our democracy and many social aspects of island life. The parishes are historic and embedded, I think, in our culture. I think the system generally works well. I think through the rating system, whilst there is some differences in the way parish deal with that, I think the rates and the services provided by the parishes present exceptionally good value, and the parish is also the focal point for many islanders' parish meetings and all sorts of a structure. They provide structure that underpin the community. I think sometimes it's disappointing to see small turnouts at parish assemblies, but of course when you get the important issues or issues that the community engage with, that can be quickly reversed. They provide many key local services to islanders. Honorary police play a central part in community work and policing. The community provides support to the state's police. I think that provides a good balance. And I'm pleased to see we enjoy a very strong relationship between the state's police and honorary police, and that's been prevalent now for some years. So, in summing it up, I think parishes are the grassroots of our island life, and I personally, and as a deputy, and the government remain fully supportive of the work they do. But we're always looking and keen to explore ways we can improve things.
Okay. Do you think there's scope for the parish system to evolve?
I'm not. It all depends how we define evolve in relationship to the parishes, because one argument, they do evolve, but there's also an argument that they stayed fairly traditional over the years, and I think that could be one of their strengths. And of course, as you know, as we all know as members of the state's constables, I think the parish and the success of the parish to an extent, well, it's underpinned by the administrative and permanent staff that we have, but often the leadership will stem from the constable who's running the parish at the time, and we see different levels of evolution, shall we say, depending on that.
You said that there's always room for improvement. What is your vision for that improvement? Do you have one?
Do you know, I'm generally quite happy with the way things run at the moment. As I said before, I think parishes work well, and when things work well, we should perhaps leave them alone. But it's right to explore and take a look. Like I said, we haven't looked at this for over 20 years. There might be improvements that can be made that we haven't identified yet. So what I was doing is saying, look, we're open-minded, and if anything comes up as part of this investigation, then we'll be pleased to look at it. But I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that needs improving.
Do you think the current parish system is, we're 2025, the parish system is over 800 years old. Do you think it's sustainable in the medium and the long term?
Yes.
And what do you think government needs to do to kind of nurture and protect the parish system?
Yes, stay out of the way, I think. Provide support where we can. Work, engage with them as we do on many issues, especially in relation to the infrastructure of the island. I think it generally runs very well.
As parish deputies, you're not part of the municipality of the parish. Do you think that parishioners understand that that's the case, or do you think that they think you should have a greater role in parish affairs?
Do you understand that? Sorry.
No, please, I'm interested in your views.
Well, having served as a deputy in the
Yes.
old system, and then as a senator, and then as in the new constituencies, I think generally we understand that as deputies. But I've worked with constables that have been much more inclusive than other constables. We're not part of the parish administration, but generally we are, I find, welcome to participate in certain aspects of that. But a lot of that can depend on the constable and their working and the way they like to work things.
Yeah, and do you think that's problematic?
I haven't experienced any problems with that, in my experiences, I've always been included and been able to participate. I wouldn't want to get involved with the parish administration.
But if a parishioner's bringing something to you as the deputy, and they expect you to represent them, and you can't make any headway because you're not part of the municipality, is that an issue?
Well, I've not found that an issue, because just as they can speak to the deputies, they can speak to their constable as well. And when they've spoken to me on parish issues, I've been able to talk to the constable and generally find a resolution. So I haven't found that to be a problem.
Deputy Millar, what about you?
I'd have to say I don't think I've had many inquiries from constituents that are particularly parish related. There may be the odd thing. There's been once or twice a constable has come to me and said, can you help this parishioner because you have specific knowledge that may be helpful here. I think we understand, and again, when you're in a multi-parish constituency, I mean, I know that I can vote when I go to Trinity. I'm not part of the municipality, but I can vote as a parishioner. But when I go to any assemblies in St John and St Lawrence, you can't vote in those. And I don't know if people necessarily understand that. But I haven't found it to be an issue. But I agree with the Chief Minister, it really does come down to the constable. I mean, I'm invited to various parish events. They're always pleased to see you at parish assemblies. We get invited to things. We participate to the extent we can.
Okay, thank you.
Could you give some examples of how that would demonstrate how effective the collaboration is between government and the parishes?
The committee's access to the government and to the executive through is a valued and important maintenance. So from an officer level, there's a lot of collaboration, especially around such things as planning, applications, infrastructure matters, transport, roadworks, licensing, various types of other administration, honorary policing. Of course, the chair of the committee attends council of ministers.
Do they have a
meetings.
vote?
No, they don't vote at council of ministers, but they attend because they're not technically not part of the government. They attend for an information sort of sharing practice.
Do you see any areas where there could be greater collaboration?
I think. I think we've got. I say greater collaboration. We have a system. I mean, for example, the dangerous dogs law is an example. In point, that's quite.
Do you think that's been an effective result? Has that demonstrated an effective system?
Well, on the grounds that scrutiny have picked up on that and scrutinised that, and the scrutiny process will do what it's meant to do and improve the legislation. And they found areas where they would have liked to see more consultation. So it generally works very well. So I can't immediately identify any major problems. Of course, there are
as the head of government,
things.
do you not think it's a problem that the committee didn't speak to the police, for example, with regards to dangerous dogs law, as you're using that as an example?
If I could just finish my last sentence. I'm not aware of any serious or major concern there's been with the way the parishes and the government interact. And there's always, I think there could be always areas where we could improve, and I think we're open to that. In relation to that specific case, I don't really want to comment too much on it, but I support
As the head
I
of
support
government,
scrutiny.
it is your role to ensure that there's a good working relationship, and surely, you would have a view about the failure to interact and engage with the states of Jersey
I'm not
police.
going to comment on that at this hearing. I think that specific case is not relevant to the broader picture.
I think it's actually quite a good example of how parish matters interact with government. I mean, certainly, Mr. Wiley, you'll know yourself. You know, if somebody from government is bringing law, there is a very distinct process to follow. That process is in writing, around policy development, around consultation, around law drafting, around submission and the like. And I think what the panel are interested to know is how that particular structure is communicated to the Comité de Connotab so that they follow it to make sure that you get good law.
Paul, do you want to take that first instance?
So you're absolutely right. There's a finite amount of legislation you can do in any one session, and in devising the Council of Ministers legislative programme and reducing that from its initial 129 items down to 59, we were very mindful that both states members and Comité and individual constables could, can and should submit their own legislation. So we kept that kind of headroom in the Legislative Drafting Office and the Law Office Department to be able to respond to that. Of course, if the Comité, if the Connotab wants to talk about how the government policy officers devise their policy submissions and go through that process, more than welcome to do that.
And in this particular case, did they do that?
Not to my knowledge, but I also would not criticise them for that. I think we're in a glass houses situation. There are many examples of government not always following the right processes, so I wouldn't necessarily criticise anyone for that.
Just about your comments about scrutiny, picking it up. I mean, scrutiny are expected to be a critical friend. I don't think scrutiny expects draft legislation to come to us, which is not actually, it's not fit for purpose. So I think there is something going wrong there.
Well, that, for example, I'm not sure how many pieces of legislation the committee have bought in this term, but it's not.
I can only recall
it's not
that
too
one.
many, but I think if we're talking about this particular point, I think that highlights an area for improvement. I think these are questions you should address to the committee if you haven't addressed it already as part of this. But it did highlight, I think, a gap where something went to the states and was picked up, and ultimately, because there were conversations, and I understood the committee decided to stand their ground and proceed, that's led to the scrutiny intervention.
So our next question is about barriers in that collaboration, but listening to your answer there, perhaps communication and lines of communication between government and parishes appears to be a bit of a barrier to performance.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think that generally works very well. The committee are their own entity. They make their own decisions, and they're not part of the government. We can give them our comments and vice versa.
But this legislation doesn't come forward from them, as you've just said, very often, and there has been a lack of communication, which appears from this side of the table to be a barrier.
When you say lack of communication, you're talking about the consultation. I don't think there's been a lack of communication between the committee, scrutiny and the government, but there's certainly been a lack of consultation, communication with, for example, JSPCA and the police in that matter, but that's a matter for the committee.
Which is part of your government. So
Yes,
do you see any other barriers?
Not off the top of my head. I think communication is key to everything, and lessons, have to be learnt. And in this case, I hope, that lessons have been learnt, that, communication and consultation is important. We've, as a government, now, former governments, we never stop learning lessons about that. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of the Treasury, do you see any areas where savings could be driven by greater collaboration with the parishes?
It would depend what you want to do. I mean, going back to the question earlier about evolution, you know, the parishes, we have 12 parishes providing services. There could be in terms of, and I think government doesn't fund the parishes. The parishes raise their own funds through the island-wide rate. They then decide how to spend those. And again, I think that's a matter, because I just think, going back to your previous question, there's an issue about how government cannot really impose itself on the parishes because the parishes are independent, and I would expect there'd be a degree of resistance to government coming in saying, well, we want you to do this, because each constable may have a different view on how that thing is to be achieved. So I think it's really for the parishes. There are probably things they could do in terms of centralising. I haven't thought about it in great, but there are in terms of centralising how the record keeping, perhaps with driving licences, computer systems. If they could get a computer, I don't know if they have a computer system that they can all access, or if they all run parish by parish. But I think they each run their own affairs independently. And I think it's that very independence that probably would make it difficult for government to come in and say, well, we don't like what you're doing, we want the 12 of you to do something differently. I think that would be, that itself could be problematic unless that was something that was framed carefully and government was saying, well, as a matter of policy, this is what we would like the parishes to do. But I think the parishes themselves and the constables would have to agree amongst themselves how to do it.
Okay, thank you. In terms of raising revenue, obviously there's already the island-wide rate. Have you considered looking and discussing with the constables opportunities for raising revenue through the rate system, say for the waste charges that you're currently looking at?
I haven't been involved in that. I don't know that. The waste charge proposal is being driven by the Minister for Infrastructure, so I would expect that that's something that he would consider. But I don't know what his thinking is on that, and it may be that the parish rate is a way to do it. It may be it's not appropriate. In fact, I think there has been something recently about it, and people have not liked the idea. Thank you.
Okay, I have questions on the parish rate system, which I expect Treasury Minister will probably answer, but Chief Minister and officers may have something to add in. So do you know how the island-wide rate is set and what factors influence this process?
It's not something I've been closely involved in. I think if it's increased in consultation with, I can't remember the last increased it. I think I would probably have a recommendation made to me to the extent we have to do that, and it will then be passed on to the parish. I haven't had a great deal of involvement with the parishes in my time as Treasury Minister.
Okay, so does anyone know how it's set? Who makes recommendations, for example?
Do you know that? So you probably know.
I don't know, unfortunately. The current rate is 94 pence per quarter for the island-wide rate that was set for 2025. The exact mechanism, unfortunately, isn't in the notes that I've provided with, but I believe it's revalorised on an annual basis, broadly in line with inflation.
There is a broad inflationary increase.
And what does the island-wide rate get spent on?
So the island-wide rate is paid into the consolidated fund as part of general revenues. So it isn't ring-fenced for any particular purpose. It is just another revenue line alongside income tax, corporate tax, and other elements. I can't remember exactly. I think when it was established, it was there were sort of other elements of expenditure that were brought in. I think it was to do with the welfare system, but it was before my time. But it isn't ring-fenced in a particular way, so it just does form part of general revenues.
Can anyone say who would decide on any changes to it apart from the annual normal increase?
If there were changes to it apart from the normal increase, that would come to me, I would imagine. If it's the island-wide rate that comes here.
But who would make the recommendation and why?
I would expect Treasury would make the recommendation.
So I believe that Treasury would look after it from a policy point of view, so our tax policy colleagues would be the people considering whether there should be changes to the island-wide rate and making recommendations. The exact mechanism, I'm very sorry, I don't have the information with me, but we can certainly come back to you afterwards with the exact way that would be done. I would assume it may well be legislative, so we would need to bring a proposition to the Assembly to change it. But I will confirm that after the hearing, if that's okay.
Yes, but I would expect any decision to change the nature of the rate or to increase it significantly would come to me through the process.
I guess the question is, is 94 pence too much? Is 94 pence too little?
So it depends on, I guess, which measures you're looking to, whether it's the right amount. Any changes to the island-wide rate to reduce it would have to be compensated by other revenue measures in wider government revenues. So it could be changed, but it would involve raising the money somewhere else. Similarly, if you put it up, it could be used to pay for certain things. So it is a lever that could be used by the States Assembly to pay for services, but that would have to be taken in the wider context of how you wish to raise money to pay for services.
So for example, just divert a little bit. Obviously, we're bringing amendments to the budget at the moment. Would it be acceptable for a member to put in an amendment that the parish rate, the island-wide rate, is raised in order to fund a particular service?
So
I simply don't know the answer to that
I don't
question.
know the answer to that. I would imagine, yes, someone could do it, but just to do things like that on the hoof without really understanding what the impact would be, because it would affect every islander and it might be viewed by islanders as a tax increase.
So you said that the island-wide... no, sorry, I'll leave it.
I think the island-wide rate has existed for some time, I believe, and it has a mechanism that has existed
How
for
much
some
revenue
time.
does the island-wide rate bring in per annum currently? You said it's 94 pence per quarter, so actually how much money does that put in the consolidated fund?
so I think it is between about 17 million a year.
17 million.
17. That's from the notes. I can double check from the budget because it'll be included as
I think you better
line.
just double check the figure, Andy, to be
I
to be
will.
sure.
So at the moment, it's the committee that is setting the increase each year. Is that right? Committee to come atop?
I don't believe they set the island-wide rate. I think
Or the
each
increase?
parish sets its own rate
Its own
for
rate,
the
yes.
parish rate.
Yeah.
I think the island-wide rate, I think because it's central, I can only imagine, I think that's done centrally.
By
If
the
it's an
committee to
inflationary-
Conotop?
No, by government, because the island-wide rate comes into government's general revenues. So I think the island-wide rate is set by
Okay,
government.
so maybe we can follow this up in writing.
Well, I'm very sorry that we don't have that information prepared for you. And just to confirm, though, the island-wide rate, so I believe it was 17 million in 2024. The estimate for 2026 in the government plan is 18.2 million.
Okay,
And it increases with inflation through the period.
thank you.
Richard, have you got some figures there? Or you'd like to share? Yeah.
Just to confirm that the island-wide rate increases each year by the change in the RPI. And looking at the figures back to 2014, it's increased from 2018 onwards a degree.
But the base rate has never changed since it was established in 2003.
No, and it would make sense, therefore, that it's the RPI that's increasing it.
Yeah, not the base rate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So now talking more about the different parish rates, should there be clearer standards or guidance for setting parish rates to ensure consistency and transparency?
Again, I think that's a question for the constables. I mean, it would appear, it would sound like a logical thing for everybody to pay the same rate. But if everybody is going to pay the same rate to the parish, you wonder what the point of the parish system is. Each parish, my understanding and what I've seen in 3 parishes is that each parish proposes their own rate depending on what they need to raise, and each parish will have different requirements for funding. They'll have different reserves, they'll have different resources. So each parish decides on its own rate. And if you were going to centralise, then you then think, well, what was the point of the parish rate? Why do we have the parish rate run by each parish? You would then, if you're going to make it consistent and the same, then you would think that the logical thing for that to do is for that to be centralised.
Okay.
Or the constables have to decide among themselves, and whether they then think whether they all want the same increase. it's a function of the parish system that they have different rates.
So my next question just leads on from this. So do you believe the current rate system is fair, given that it's based on parish needs rather than property characteristics? For example, a 3-bedroom house in a parish like, say, Grouville could pay more or less than a similar house in St. Peter. Does this raise any concerns about equity?
Well, I think each parish, they have their own rates assessors, I believe. It is done on the nature of the property. I think once a property attracts a rateable value, so if you have a 3-bedroom house, you are assessed on that property within your own parish. If you do an extension, stick another bedroom on, then your rateable value will change when you notify that to the parish. There are differences, but it is a function of the parish system, and if we wanted everybody to be the same, then we would have to re-rate every house across the island, and I think that would have to be done centrally, and I would have thought that would have to come out of the hands of the parishes, and I'm not sure how that then speaks to the independence of the parishes. I have no idea how much owners of 3-bedroom houses change, because 3-bedroom houses, one 3-bedroom house can be very, very different from another, regardless of location.
But bearing that in mind, you might have one with exactly the same attributes in one parish to another parish, but because the parish rate is set higher, because the parish might have done a lot of their own roadworks or something, then one householder pays a lot more.
Because they live in that parish, and
Yeah.
the parish has done the roadworks.
Yeah.
So if the parish in Grouville are doing roadworks, that means that parish rate has got to go up. Then there is also an argument that it's fair that the parish parishioners who get the most benefit from the roadworks should pay for them, rather than people in St. Juan, for example, who are generally not getting the benefit. So you either have to centralise everything, to my mind. You either have to centralise everything and make everything identical, and take it out of the parishes, or you have to accept that there are differences depending on which parish you live in.
Yeah, well, maybe not everything, but some things, yeah. Should there be an independent body or professional oversight to advise on rate setting and the methodology behind it?
I think I don't know a great deal about how they set rates, but I think that would be sensible. There would be a cost to doing that, but I think the parishes could pay that. I think there is some disparity. I think there may be some disparity. I think it's a problem that they have in other countries. You know, for example, in the UK, rateable values haven't changed for a very long time. So the question is always, how do you get consistency and fairness both within a parish and across parishes? So I think more guidance would be useful, certainly. I think perhaps somebody they could go to for advice might be useful. I would imagine they do that if they have particularly difficult issues. I don't know if they can do that if they have difficult issues. I've not been involved in how you assess rates.
Are you responsible for the rates law?
I don't know. I haven't read it. I don't know.
Okay. Now that we have the rented dwellings licensing scheme in place, do you think there's scope for joined up working between the parishes and that scheme, which holds information on rental properties?
You would like to think so. You know, the notion of 12 parishes going away and setting up 12 different registers is quite absurd. So you would like to think, to me, you would like to think a central system would be a good idea, that information can be held in a central place for that. It would just, to me, be logical and efficient for that to happen. But again, it comes back to, and I can't remember what the law says about that, if the law applies specific rules to each parish or each constable, then they may have their own views as to how they implement that. But I think consistency and coherence is always useful.
Okay. I think this will be my last question on this. Rates can be considered as a revenue-raising mechanism. So does the Treasury Minister believe the relationship between parish rates and broader taxation policy has been properly understood and communicated?
I would I would think that people understand there is a difference between parish rates, that you pay income tax on your income, and you pay parish rates which are linked to your property, whether that's owned or let, and where you live, and that parish rates are there to provide the services, to fund the services provided by the parish. I don't think the two are necessarily linked. If a particular parish was to decide, it's set by the parish at parish assemblies. If a constable decided, they I think have to run a budget the same way as everybody else does. So if a constable decided that they wanted to re-tarmac a road, and to do that they had to raise the parish rates significantly, they would have to have the parishioners approve that. And I think it is issues about the rate and the raising of rates that can be controversial at parish meetings. It's not happened when I've been at them. They've been accepted rates, but the parish accept the rate, and I think that is one area, going back to, I think the Chief Minister mentioned, sometimes quite low turnouts at parish meetings. And I think that's why I think the parishes, if they are going to do significant increases, I would have thought would be well advised to make sure parishioners are aware of that, so they can come to the Assembly to vote on it. Because if you have a small number of people voting to increase the rate and everybody else is blissfully ignorant until the bill arrives or the assessment arrives, that's not positive. But I think they are quite different creatures, if you like, and they are dealt with separately, and I think people understand they're dealt with separately through the parish.
Can I make just going on that, because rates are levied in accordance with the property's relatable quarters determined by the property's attributes, and that's where I think there's some confusion around parishes. How they rate the attributes of the property may vary slightly. So the total amount includes the parish, the occupier, the foncier, and the island-wide rate, and then they multiply that by the number of quarters. If you actually tried to formalise a system for agreeing property attributes, the property's attributes, which was similar across the island, then you could still you're then, because the parish then work out what the rate will be in line with the expenses they need to run the parish. If all the attributes were the same, then they could still amend they'd agree how much per quarter would be. So that.
I think that was the reason for the question about the licensing scheme, because that's gathering evidence about a property's attributes, and therefore there's some crossover, because you've got two bodies in the island, or actually 13 bodies in the island, that are all collecting information about the same properties.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where there is a duplication of effort.
What we have to remember is the parish is an honorary system, so all this work around the parish is done by people who give their time freely to do it. So if we start centralising it, expect more cost to follow.
I just think the word centralisation has been mentioned quite a lot in the last half an hour. There is certainly no intention, and it's explicit in the terms of reference. This is absolutely not about centralising parish systems, but it is about understanding the impact of having 12 different systems, and understanding the equity across the island, because everybody is a citizen of Jersey, regardless of the parish. I just wanted to make that clear.
And also, if you have volunteers giving of their time to deliver a service for the public, it would be a better use of their time, and they could be more effective in other areas if they weren't duplicating effort with some government service that's already collecting information about property, for example. Anyway, earlier, Treasury Minister, you mentioned the waste collection and the idea that there may be some benefit to looking at collaboration across the island when for refuse collection. Are there any other particular services or functions where you can see that some collaboration might benefit delivery?
I'm not sure. I really, as I say, I don't know how the waste charges are going to go, and I think there may be. I think the problem is I think we also need to remember that not every parish provides the same services. I think a lot of what each parish does depends very much on the needs of the community, what the community wants, what the community needs, and also I think the nature of the constable. I think the constable themselves the constable's own interests, where they see the level of need, where they want to promote things. The constable is a very big player in that, and for example, we know that the Constable of St Martin is very engaged with the issue of play and availability of play equipment for children. Others have different focuses. They may focus more on the older communities in the parish. And also, just going back to the waste charges, I think one area where that's different is that not everybody has mains drains. So you could be asking people in places like Trinity, for example, to pay a waste charge when they don't actually have mains drains. So I think there are difficulties with that, but it still comes back to there are centrally provided services which have to be funded by government, and services provided by the parish. Now we have to take, for good reason, I think the only real example I can probably think of something being taken centrally is the welfare system, where for very good reasons, I understand it, the welfare system was taken from the parish and put into a properly run, professional, clear, consistent income support system. And that came away from the parishes. The parishes still have funds that they can pay out if they wish, they have charitable resources, but I personally cannot identify, or I haven't seen something that I would say you could take that away and do it from the parishes. I can't think offhand of something.
Same, I can't think. I think the balance is pretty good.
I do, yeah.
So do you think that the parishes have a role in helping to deliver the common strategic priorities of the government?
It all depends. If some of that overlaps into the work they do as a parish, then...
For example, recycling or putting children first, delivering parks.
I'm just trying to think of our 13 common strategic policies, and I think, as I've said, the parishes operate as independent to government, so they're not obliged to operate alongside the common strategic priorities, but in practice we find they generally adhere to those policies.
I mean, the constables are all members of the Assembly. The Assembly accepted common strategic policy. So, but again, as I say, I think it does come down to what each constable thinks is the greatest need. And if the constable thinks, for example, that the greatest need is with the older community, they may focus on that. If they think the greatest need is with young children, they may focus on that. I think that's where the parishes the constables can really look at the needs of the community in that particular parish, which are all different.
Thank you. Do you see any areas where there could be greater engagement with parishioners and the parishes?
I don't know, it's quite difficult to say. I mean, one of the things... I probably did not get involved in the parish at all until relatively recently, because it was there, I went there to vote, but otherwise I wouldn't have gone to the parish hall very regularly. I paid my rates, I knew what the rates were paid for. So as a parishioner, citizen, I didn't engage very much with the parish at all. And I think there are clearly lots of people who are very similar. They don't engage with the parish because they have no need to. But I think if you are, I think a lot of the constables are trying to make the best use of the parish halls. They've got mother and toddler groups, they've got classes, exercise sessions. They're trying to use the parish hall for community purposes. And again, I think that comes to the constable to try and drive that. I think it would be what I think this is absolutely a personal opinion. It seems to me, having observed in 3 parishes over the last few years, that what the parishes really, really need is to try and get younger people involved at a much earlier stage. It is an honorary system, and the the parishes often rely on the elected positions, things like rates assessors and all those parish roles. They are heavily relying on the older community. And in many ways that's a good thing, but I think in terms of modernising, evolving, doing things differently, getting some younger people in to cast fresh eyes over what each parish does would be a good thing. That is just we are very reliant on older communities, and younger people I think do have a lot more to offer, and how we engage younger people with the parish. I think it's an ongoing challenge. I think the honorary police are doing very well in that. They seem to be getting some younger people going forward. That's a good thing. But I think as an island, as an overall community, the more we can get younger people engaging with the municipality, then the more likely the parishes are to evolve and modernise. I think I've always used the word modernise rather than evolve. It's the same word, really, isn't it?
Thank you. You just made me think then when you said about young people that obviously we've got our youth assembly, perhaps we should have a youth committee.
I like that idea, yeah.
Well, they have youth.
That would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I think they all have
Bit of
youth
reverse
clubs.
mentoring.
They all have youth clubs.
They do.
I think they all have youth
Yeah,
clubs.
they do indeed. Yeah.
And youth provision.
Yeah, they will support that. Yeah, I just had some questions about sustainability, and it was really about what you see as the main pressures affecting the sustainability of the parishes, and be that financial or operational.
Are you talking about financial sustainability or
Both really, and operational sustainability.
Yeah.
To be able to continue doing what they're doing into the future.
I think they seem to be well resourced, well financially managed. All, if not most, of the parishes have got good reserves. They run tight teams. If anything, I think it'd be the other way around. I think government could perhaps learn from some of the ways they operate. We've seen a huge increase in our headcount, and maybe we should take a leaf out of the parishes' books in some areas. In terms of, so I think from my experiences as an islander, as a citizen, I've always been very happy with the parish, in the parishes I've lived in. I've never had a problem. I've always felt we've had good value for the rates. We don't notice it, but it's maybe when we come back from being abroad or in the UK, we just realise how clean our roads and country lanes are kept. And I think it generally works very well. And there's no evidence to suggest the current system isn't sustainable.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions about the parish's financial reporting and management. We received a written submission which raised concerns about how parish accounts are reported, and that some parishes are not currently prepared, the accounts are not currently prepared using GAAP or standardised accounting framework. Do you have any views on this approach?
Well, I agree that using GAAP is a good practice and that should be encouraged. It is a matter for the parishes. The key thing, I think, is that their accounts contain all of the information and detail that the parish needs, that the parishioners need if they want to investigate their parishes. Expenses, obviously, St Helier is a little bit different just because of its size and scale.
And St Helier does use that.
Yeah.
In your view, should Treasury have a role in offering guidance or setting minimum expectations for parish accounting practices?
I think we should perhaps offer assistance or guidance if it's required, but I'll leave that to Elaine.
Well, I think each parish has its own administration, and I think certainly the three parishes that I'm involved in do seem to have
and their procurers, of course,
administrative resource that's very capable. The accounts that I see, each parish, the accounts are audited, and I think audited accounts are important. I haven't seen a set of accounts where the auditor has raised any concerns. The accounts that you see are very detailed, very, very detailed, in the sense of, I think they're all similar in the sense of the what you might call heads of expenditure. You know, we spent this on cleaning and lighting. You know, it's every single line. You get the profit and loss account, income and expenditure, are very, very detailed. The observation, if I was going to make one, about, again, it comes back to the resourcing within. I mean, Treasury is not there to provide accounting advice. I mean, I'm sure we would do if there was an issue. But if you want us to advise all 12 parishes, then I probably need more staff to do that, because you're busy, aren't you? But I think going forward, I think the parishes could possibly benefit from is perhaps setting out clearer rules around governance in terms of, once people are in those roles. I mean, if I take the example of the state-owned entities or other companies where independent non-execs are appointed, people doing honorary roles, they are given a fixed time period. You know, so normally you would not be a non-executive director of a company for more than 9 years. And I think there is a case in the parishes where people are in those roles for potentially decades. And I think that always, and that's not a criticism, that the parish are very appreciative and they really value long service. But I think if you have the same people doing the same thing for a very, very long time, there's always a risk of complacency, there's a risk of error, there's a risk of failing to modernise and not coming up with modern standards, because nobody's coming in saying, well, actually, this is how it's done now. So this is something I say in virtually every context, that, you know, if somebody is in a job for 20 years, that's not always a good thing. So I think some more thought about the fact that somebody is willing to put themselves up for election over and over and over again. Yes, it's marvellous from their commitment to public service. Is it necessarily a good thing from keeping up to date with change, encouraging change? And are you at risk of people taking their eye off the ball, putting over-reliance on those people? I have absolutely no evidence to suggest there is any issues with complacency or people taking their eye off the ball. I've never seen a set of accounts that's been problematic, but I just have this natural, if you have the same people doing the same thing for a very long time, there are risks involved with that, and I think it would be good for the parishes to consider, you know, the same person has been a rates assessor for 30 years. It's marvellous that you've given that time, but perhaps new people would come in and have different views and different ideas, and I think there is always room for fresh blood, fresh eyes, and that feeds back to my earlier comment about trying to engage younger people, so that we have younger people coming in for, you maybe go in and do a term when you're 40, but you don't come in when you're 50 and you're still there when you're 80. And that is absolutely not meant to criticise anybody, because I really do value the level of public service.
So while there's lots of people doing a great job,
yes,
and everything, we have had concerns raised in submissions. So do you think there is a role then for Treasury to do something, whether it's offering more guidance or whatever to the parishes, and will that happen?
We haven't been asked to provide guidance. I'm sure it's something we could think about if it was in terms of things like, you know, I absolutely have no evidence there is anything problematic in terms of the financial administration in the parish. If it was advice in terms of governance, how they do things, how frequently they should think about how long somebody should be in a role before they move on to another role or retire.
Sorry,
I don't know if you have a view on that, Andy.
So just from a technical and the financial reporting point of view, we haven't done a huge amount of work on this, because obviously it is the Connotabs who set the accounting policies that they use in their accounts. So it's not really for Treasury to start meddling, as it were, although if they were asked us for advice, we could. Some of the challenge would be, when we say gap, it's finding what the right generally accepted accounting principles for the body in question are. So obviously, if you're a private company, you may use IFRS, or you may use one of the UK company reporting standards. If you're a smaller entity, you might use the IFRS 102. which is designed for small companies. The government of Jersey has moved to IFRS as amended following what the UK central government do. You've also got IPSAS standards. I'm not aware of a out-of-the-box standard solution that would apply to a public sector entity the size of a parish, because they're quite and I don't mean this disrespectfully, they're relatively small in the world of accounting standards. So how would you make sure that whatever standards you're applying are proportionate and adding value? So you would have to do some work to decide what they are, and I guess it's what additional benefit you would have if all of the information is being provided in the reports as they stand. Would you just be putting another layer of complexity on top of something which is actually working? So I think you would just, before undertaking what could be quite interesting, I should say, although I'm not necessarily volunteering for extra work, exercise to find out, well, what standards would you apply, but would it actually improve how well parishioners understand those accounts? Because if not, is it actually justified?
Yeah, because the accounts aren't massively detailed. I mean, the accounts are maybe 8, 9, 10 pages. They are detailed, but they're a small document and they're not difficult to read. So I think if you bring in standards, as Andrew says, bringing standards, that they then have a whole list of, well, we haven't followed that because we haven't followed that because we haven't followed that because, you know, if you're then having to say, we'll adopt this standard but then exclude, have a whole load of declarations saying we haven't followed it because it's just not appropriate for us.
Okay,
It's difficult.
I guess I'm just thinking about, for example, small charities are governed by the Charities Commission. So you have to submit things every year, you have to do things in a certain way, but parishes aren't governed by anybody other than the Connotab, who set their own standards, who set their own policies.
Well, there are laws, aren't there?
Assembly.
There's the rates law and the laws
But
that...
we're still trying to establish who's responsible for the rates law. And
Well, in relation to the island-wide rate, it's a States Assembly. I think to change the island-wide rate, you bring an amendment to the rates law, and that goes to the Assembly. In relation to the accounts, the preparation of accounts in accordance with the applicable law, and I'm not sure what law that is. I'm not sure if any of you know.
Given the lack of knowledge with regards the accountability, where is the oversight provided and how
Excuse
is
me,
that
what do you mean by
provided?
lack of knowledge?
Well, it was clear neither of you knew earlier.
Well,
that
I've just
who
explained
was
it.
responsible.
Or the
So
rates
when-
law, because I
when
haven't read
answering.
it. The rates law,
Yeah.
if the rates law has a minister responsible, that
It's the
minister
committee.
will be special. So it's a
Yeah,
committee.
but we
So there
said that,
isn't a minister. And I don't know the answer because it's not my responsibility. I've never had to look at it.
But the
because the
amendment,
committee.
but usually the amendments are brought by the Treasury Minister to the rates law.
I haven't been asked to make an amendment.
Yeah, we haven't. No,
We haven't done it
So I
for
mean,
probably
it
20
hasn't
years.
crossed
I
my
can-
desk.
No,
I don't
2006.
think.
26, yeah.
Okay.
I think
I'm
I think the fact that there isn't a law. I think the parishes still, as you say, they have existed for 800 years. They are holding and managing, some of them, very significant sums of money. And I think whether or not you have a law, they are all producing accounts that are audited. So the an auditor will have, to suggest there's some kind of Wild West, I don't think that's happening. Auditors have standards in terms of when they come in to do an audit. Audit means something in their profession. And if they are going to do an audit, they will apply their professional standards to the set of accounts. And is it a clean audit opinion? So I think the fact that there isn't something saying constables must do, setting out what they must do, the fact that they have an audit and that they are scrutinised by the parish assembly, the procureur, I think that means that there are checks and balances. I'm really concerned. I've said something that people think there's something going there. That I have nothing to suggest there is anything untoward with any financial administration.
Thank you.
I'm sure accounts are well kept and are audited, and I think the audit is the critical factor.
I'm just conscious of time. So I mean, you've talked about modernisation. I guess I've just got a couple of final questions. You know, if you were to identify any areas where the parish system might benefit from some modernisation, what would they be, Chief Minister? What do you see as the future of the parish system?
Well, obviously it's evolved over the last 800 years. If we went into how the parishes were run, then I think we'd find considerable differences. I can't see a great need for a change. I mean, I think we could perhaps tighten up on certain regulations, for example, gap accounting is a good practice to be held by all the parishes. I think there could be more. There could be more access. Could be more detail. Income and expenditure could be more detailed for parishioners to look at. But I think the parish systems work well. I think there could be improvements to the way committee and government and the states and scrutiny interact, especially. I mean, committee don't often bring legislation, but when they do, we could look at tightening that up a little bit. But generally, it works well.
The committee are not a statutory body.
No.
The committee is just 12 connotar.
That's right. Yes.
Do you think there might be some benefit in establishing the committee in law as a committee that would establish some ground rules, I guess?
I don't know. I'd have to give that some thought. I'm not sure. Obviously, you consider that in your deliberations. It could be a good idea. I'm not sure.
I can't say I've given it any thought, and I'm not sure what would the purpose of that law be. If you created the committee, you then create a formal structure where people are obliged to do certain things. Who's the chair? Who's the vice chair? What powers does it have? How do you deal with dispute? How do you deal with
In the same way
constant
that
Hellier saying we must all adopt this policy, and a small parish saying, well, that absolutely doesn't work for us. So I think the value of the parish system is that it does look on a community by community basis across the parishes. And I think bringing the committee together, you're almost bringing the parishes into one rather than 12. And I think it's the 12 bodies. I'm sure there are things in terms of services that you could bring in, but if you bring in all these things, you then end up, every time you bring something out of the parish, like driving licences, every time you bring something out of the parish, you reduce their value in a way.
Any final questions? I don't think no, not at all. Okay, right on time.
Well, actually, you could have had another 4 minutes.
No, that's fine. Thank you for attending today. We're very
you very much.
grateful
Thank you.
for your time, and we'll close the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.